So for anyone who is jumping on live right now, we have Egan here who has agreed to come and jump on and talk about his journey, his studies, his everything, how our worlds have collided. So for anyone who's jumping on who has not seen your face before, who's maybe from my following, who's new here, can you give them a bit of I wanted to start by asking you did a degree in psychology, right? What did you get from that and what didn't you get from that is probably the best opening question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'd say it gave me a lot of foundations, and I mean, I was young when I started that, right? Or youngish. I guess I'm still young relative, but I was 18, 19 years old. And what I got was just gave me a lot of foundations to what even the brain was, all the essentials to what you need to know. And I didn't really know much back then. So I was just, my purpose for studying psychology came from, I guess, my own inner world, my own sort of struggles and chaos. And it was during 2019, that was when the world was sort of in shambles, and my sort of personal life was, in shambles as well. And I'd come from an identity of chasing after achievement, I guess, with my sport and academics. So I was using it as sort of a vessel for my own curiosity to sort of understand what was happening in my world. And I just kept asking questions. Even when I was in the psychology degree, I was very curious, but it didn't really give me complete answers. So I guess, I even reckon halfway through the degree, I sort of lost interest, to be honest. And I just wanted to get the degree to complete it, to be frank. And because I knew that it wasn't really giving me the answers, I was starting to find more answers outside of the degree with listening to podcasts, reading books. So I finished the psych degree, but it didn't really give me an understanding, a deep understanding of who I am, and understanding how to ask the right questions and figure this sort of reality out. It's quite broad, but for me, I wanted to just, the key word that comes to me was understanding. I didn't understand past patterns in my life, and psychology degree helped a little bit with that, but it didn't really give me a bigger picture to it.
And interesting, you've obviously done the Aaruka certification now, and I have a heavy focus on trauma. Is it true that there is not really any depth to trauma in the standard degree? You have to go on to do further studies if you want to learn more about trauma?
Yeah, honestly, I didn't even really hear that word in my degree. You don't really hear much about it. And you spend a lot of time, and this would be my criticism of any degree, let alone just psychology, is you spend a lot of time just studying what. You're given this blank, you're not taught the process of how to learn and understand, or even why you're studying these things in the first place. And that's what I kept asking, okay, this is and firstly in psychology, as you know, that there's a whole replication crisis, right? All the foundational studies in psychology that they use to support their framework, such as the DSM, they can't even replicate the foundational studies. So I'm going, this is literally it's like a pyramid scheme for a degree. It couldn't support itself. The truth doesn't need defense, and it constantly didn't have answers, complete answers on its own. It was using bias studies and all this stuff. So I guess it barely scratched the surface with the subconscious mind or trauma or energetics or all the other stuff that is taught in the course.
And it doesn't really then prepare you for working with real life people, because if you're working with somebody's struggle, really at the end of the day, it's coming back to something that happened in the past, which is a trauma, whether it's little, big trauma, it's coming back to something that's happened.
Yeah. And the same thing for school, the same criticisms, you're not taught how to deal with people, like the word intuition, you don't even understand what that means, or how to have hard conversations, how to hold space for someone who's really struggling, how to even have compassion, or how to ask questions, what sort of questions, why in questions are important. You're taught a lot of the what, but you're not we're a human being going through a really challenging time. You're not even told how to sit with that, how to even sit with yourself, how important it is to do the work on yourself. What does that work even mean? What does inner work even mean? you're taught none of this stuff. You're just given, like us, like diagnose them with this problem and then help them manage their symptoms, rather than actually, okay, what's actually at the root? Like you talk a lot about, like what's actually creating these symptoms in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not a lot of that out there. And that comes from the fact that a lot of people would prefer a short-term solution than a long-term, like short-term relief over a long-term solution. And we
Yeah,
just
and
want
because that's
human
all
nature.
that's all they know is available to them. And this is what I mean within the system of the world. It's like this is why I love the work that you do and so many people do in this space, because we're trying to create more awareness, because I think human beings do their best given their current level of awareness, but our consciousness is so low given sort of this like world that we operate from, like from our survival programming. That's why I trying to continue to spread these messages, build this work similar to you, because I believe that if people had the tools and the resources and the access and the understanding, or a new paradigm of existing, they would do it given the opportunity. They're just so stuck in a paradigm that they've been handed down to them through conditioning and society. And that's why we need to re-educate and then give them experiences so they can understand that, they can have a totally different relationship to life.
I love that. And I know that I always think about, if we can give people a new experience and a new reality in their mind first, it manifests into their reality. And that's where doing that work of like processing the past and creating new moments, new memories, new beliefs, new feelings that they've never felt before, it does start to manifest into, and not in a spiritual way, not in a like manifesting woo-woo way, like a literal perception. So perception shift is what we're creating. And again, it's something that you're not really taught if you're going down a mainstream path, which is, I probably sound like a conspiracy theorist here, but that's pretty much intentional to like there's no going deeper on anything. We're keeping it pretty surface level to keep everyone in the right race. But so from the psych degree, you finished it because you were like, I'm just going to get the piece of paper, right? But after that, what did you do? Like, I know you went into podcasting and maybe coaching, but what was the journey after that?
I guess, it was it was sort of my information era, I'd call it, like just consuming information, like trying to understand, and I continue to apply these things to myself. So I started I think it was one of Mark Manson's books was to start like The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Like that was the real beginning. And then I started James Clear's Atomic Habits. So it was like real personal development world where I was just trying to change the way that I thought, the way that my behaviors, my feelings, just real basic level stuff, not really even processing anything from the past or trying to understand that, just more future focus, current focus. Like let's create a system of actions that supports me. And I came from a sort of a high performance background and mindset where I've always wanted to strive. So there was still like that undercurrent of tension. I have to get life right. Like I'm not good enough unless I do all this self mastery. So it was sort of I was still somewhat relatively stuck, but it changed my life. Like I felt better. I started to understand some things from the past, and you can get a lot of initial relief from understanding. And like I know there's a bit of demonization around intellectualizing things, but to start with, like it can be such a roadmap to like, oh my god, this is actually what's happening with me. Even it might not change the neural wiring, and it might not be the long lasting thing, but initially it can be like such a safe way to explore your inner world. That's why I loved it, because it gave me a comfortable way to relate to my own mind in a new way. And that continued. I started the podcast, I think it was near the back end, probably midway through my psychology degree. I started just with athletes, because interviewing athletes, that was sort of what I was into at the time, obviously chasing my own semi-professional sporting goals. And it just continued to naturally evolve. Like my whole thing was be curious, and I kept following the thread. Like what was I curious about? Just kept asking questions and followed my quote unquote intuition. I didn't really know what that meant back at the time, but I was just, leaning into it. And naturally over time, when I look back, I can sort of connect the dots, but you can't, even right now in my life, like you don't really know how life's going to unfold. You don't really know, but a lot of people in this space who have a feeling that there's something more available to them, a greater degree of understanding of healing, transformation. Like all I did was just keep following what was true to me, kept asking questions, and inevitably, like you will find answers and you will continue to evolve if you're willing to sort of let go of what you think is right and wrong in your own paradigm of existence.
Absolutely. Agree. So you went into podcasting, you were interviewing athletes, and then you just kept following that curiosity. You ended up, so how did you end up because obviously I'd come on your podcast twice. And we always just like had little chats and things in the DMs. And then one day you were like, I'm doing Aaruka. And I was like, what? Okay. How did that come about? Like, how did you come around to, and how did you decide on like studying Aaruka, I guess?
Yeah, so I guess independently, I'd researched and studied under a lot of, I guess, human behavior experts in the world, and I still pull strings from everyone's work. I feel like one of the things I didn't like about the, whatever you want to call it, self-help, personal transformation world is a lot of the healing modalities are quite specialized because like specific sells, right? Like in the world of marketing. But I feel like a lot of the frameworks do have blind spots. And what appealed to me with the Aaruka was, it's quite a complete model. Like it integrates and it pulls strings from all worlds. So that was enticing. And yeah, I just felt like, especially when it came to energetics and somatics, there was some like blind spots and limits in my own world. Like I felt I'm quite heady by nature. Like my whole background was, I have a PhD in overthinking, and I specialize in that. But I've been really able to, especially in the last 6 months, really, I guess you could connect with the being part of me, like the feeling and being and a lot of that has come from the byproduct of, integrating all of these past experiences. But I really just love the way that Aaruka pieced together everything, like, especially with the toolkit. Like I used to be quite like, you have to do healing in this certain systemized way. But the thing I loved about it is it's like, you've got a great toolkit, it has all the tools. And then, especially as a quote unquote practitioner, what I believe is my strength and what I believe is important is to actually be able to listen to what someone's saying. I think as humans, we have such a tendency to project what we think is important or right onto others, but really listening to someone who's right in front of you, like, what are they actually saying? What are they speaking? And that takes a lot of trust and practice, and to continue to do that for myself. But I think having such a big toolkit where you can be like, okay, this person needs this, and really trusting that, like, even with the first, I've done probably 15 sessions now with the method, and yeah, it had some incredible results. And a lot of it's just from having a toolkit, because it's not a cookie cutter approach. Humans aren't cookie cutters. You can't just apply everything to everyone. You got to be able to listen and know what to give them. And I think Aaruka has like one of the best toolkits and value for money, like for how much it costs and the investment, and for what you learn and what you're able to facilitate a human transformation. I think it's incredible.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think what you were saying about that, like no cookie cutter, it's funny because it's some people what they run with and what they love and what they embrace about it. And then other people, it's what they find the hardest, because if you don't have, and you already did have a strong intuition and a connection with your intuition, if you don't have that, I always say to people, like, you can have all of the wisdom in the world, or you can have all of the tools, and you can have the structure. But if you don't have intuition, when someone goes off script, you've got nothing. And you need to be, this is why, like, I know, and most people aren't on script. And this is why a lot of modalities that I learned, it was like, well, what happens if like we're reading this script, and what if that wasn't the cause of it? Or what if that wasn't where it takes them? Like, then what do we do? And that's where essentially the session ends, or the capacity to heal that person ends. And for me, it was like, how do I give someone a really deep understanding of the human, to answer all the whys for someone like you and me, who is like, but why? Well, this is why. This is what their body's doing. This is what their energy is doing. This is how it connects to the quantum field. This is how it connects to like a real human lens. This is how it connects to a spiritual lens, tying it all in so that the why is answered, so that that's kind of like cemented first. And then you use your intuition to flow with that person and to go, oh, I thought I was going to need to do a forgiveness technique here, but I actually think that we need to do a cutting of the cord, because I'm feeling that they need this disconnection, or I'm feeling they need to have this conversation before we can do this. You can't know which tool to use at which time and flow with that without the element of intuition. And that's why it still falls under the energy work or alternative work, because you need that. And a lot of people try to systemize it, and they're like, yeah, but they want the framework. And there's a framework and there's a method, which is that you have to be ticking off those 4 pillars. You've got to have them in the right brainwave. You've got to have them saying it out loud. You've got to have them moving their body, expressing. You've got to incorporate those 4 pillars. But the way in which you do that is going to be intuitive because people are so different. And yeah, I love that you said that, because that's my whole thing, is like you can't teach a script and expect it to work for everybody. And this is why I can comfortably say that it will work for everybody if you've got a good practitioner, because they'll pivot with you and they'll use their intuition to know what you need next, and what you need next and what the other person needs next from the exact same trauma is two different things, two different people, lives, backgrounds, experiences, souls. So it's like, it is that. I think Lewis says this. I know we have mutual friend Lewis Huckstep in common, who says, I think he learned from DeMartini, which I think you've also learned some things from DeMartini method, which is like using the mixed martial artist who uses the right tool at the right move at the right time. It's actually knowing how to do that. And I feel like I'm so glad when I saw that you were coming in and you were signing up, because I was like, you're the exact kind of person that has that same mind and has that ability to pull it all together.
Yeah, and this is what I liked as well. It's very practical, and I think this course is definitely would help a lot of people, like practitioners' blind spots, who are quite intellectual by nature, because especially it pulls on a lot of the energetics. Like this is the thing, when you know a lot or have a lot of knowledge, that can get you can still be in this sort of like subconscious prison of like, I'm not good enough, which, I'm not enough. We've talked about that, one of the core beliefs, and like that can stay, that even as a practitioner, you can have that tension. Like you can go in attached to outcomes. And I've had to really learn this. It's probably the last 6 to 12 months when I've started, my business, working with people, having different experiences. When you have your own stuff, you need outcomes from client sessions. Like with scarcity around, like, I need this result for them. And like, I've had it before. Like you stop listening, you start projecting outcomes. You start wanting to be so certain of how it's going to play out. Rather than like being present, listening. And that takes experience and time. And that's where having more tools in the toolkit can be so useful and important. But so many of the tools in the toolkit are practical. Whereas, I've read a lot of stuff. I've consumed a lot of information, but there's a lot of stuff that is not practical. And that's where there's a difference between like knowing a lot, but also like being able to facilitate a process. Like they overlap, but they can be very distinct like skills in themselves. And that's where the course, I think, is helps you fast track that skill so much. I mean, it doesn't substitute real experience, but I think it's one of the greatest like packaged things where it puts everything together. Like I think anyone, and what I love as well, it's not overly wordy and intellectualized. There's so many like things out there that get fluffy. There's so much fluffy language to compensate, to try and make it sound smart. I mean, I've definitely done that a lot in my time, but it strips it back to simplicity. Like we don't need to overcomplicate it just to try and prove that it works. Like it works. Like it gives great results. Like that should be enough in of itself.
And I think that if you can simplify something complicated, that's actually a really powerful skill, because a lot of people, you lose them when you overcomplicate something, and you lose the actual. My whole thing is simplifying things, taking complicated things and simplifying them and tying them into things that everybody can understand, to give them those light bulb moments. And I think that's what we were actually joking about in the start. You're like, this is just a course full of light bulb moments. It should be called the light bulb course because that's what people are actually looking for. And I think the quicker you can get them there, the quicker they can understand how things work and why they work, and get the results. Because at the end of the day, all I fucking want is actual practitioners out there who are creating shifts, who are having clients come and who are completing processes, who are healing traumas, who are actually helping people to evolve and move forward, to break this cycle of people going to multiple different practitioners and and still not really progressing, still coming back up with the same shit, like actually having some breakthroughs. So I would love to know, you said, you finished the certification semi-recently, you've done about 15 sessions. Is there anyone that has provided you with like a testimonial or feedback, or someone who you could give a bit of an outline? Because there's a lot of people who don't understand what Aaruka is, how it can work, how it works, how it can work for them. Would you be able to explain briefly someone who came to you with a problem and how you used the Aaruka method and what you did and how that's shifted for them?
Yeah, of course. So I guess the start of a session, to be honest, is a lot of like asking questions and trying to understand where I'm going to go with the session. I guess trying to like figure out like the root cause. So a lot of, for me, like, is listening to language. Like, I think, in my belief, like, our language is quite automatic. Like, a lot of the time we don't think to what we're saying. It's too hard. So we often end up projecting these subconscious limits without realizing it. So if you have someone who's quite objective, you can understand how they've almost trapped themselves in their language, which is an extension of their own limits. So when people are struggling with something, like, if you listen really intently and then you sort of ask questions, you can follow that thread and sort of start to figure out, okay, this is coming from this sort of place. So I try to do that for the start of the session. And then we obviously, once I sort of figure out, okay, yep, this is what it is, and we sort of find more of the root cause, and then we try and come up with, okay, where did this come from? And obviously we're trying to get them in a subconscious state. So before we dive into the specific memory and do the process, I'm taking them into a theta brainwave state. And a lot of people don't realize, but on the day to day, like, we're in such a hyper-vigilant, like, active state. Like, our thinking mind is so switched on. Like, it's, you can't, like, think your way in your conscious state to get into your subconscious mind. So I take them through a process where I play some music, some binaural beats, which I don't actually know the full science of that, but I'm guessing it's something to do with the frequency is like almost connected to this earth, like and this, I don't know, this is where you have to sort of let go of, like, some of the because the facts are right, but it just works. Like, I've done it to myself so many times. It makes you feel really calm, and and you do this eye movement technique, and then I take them through a bit of a visualization script, and they're just in a really calm state. So they're in a subconscious state where they're able to actually sort of, like, free. Like, I always think of it like, imagine you had a library of, like, all your memories and all your experiences, but if you're in the conscious mind, it's like you're going to the front of the library and you're not able to, like, you can sort of, like, peek through, but you can't really see the granular detail of the library and go into those memories. But when you sort of go into the subconscious state, it's like the whole library opens up. It's like the librarian lets you through. You're able to go into all these memories, open up the books and see what's actually in those. And that's where the real powerful work happens, when you're actually in the granular detail of the memory, because that's where experiences get coded, and that's where fears or whatever symptoms they're presenting with actually get created from. So once we're able to actually, calm them down, and we sort of have an idea where the root cause is, and we go into the memory and we do a process. And like I said, so many tools in the toolkit that can be done, whether it's like a healing conversation. So let me try and think of one recently that would be good to talk about. So I had one actually where this young guy, he's probably 19 or 20, and his symptoms were, he had a lot of guilt and shame, and he was, a lot of, like, tension, trying to get life right, still young, figuring himself out. And what came up for him, so I started to notice in his language, like, he's probably operating from the constraint of, like, I'm not enough. So we started to ask questions about experiences that may have generated a story, because at the end of the day, it's like there's a story that they concluded about themselves, because they're a young person trying to navigate this world. So they're trying to, limiting beliefs come from experiences. So I started asking questions, and we found that, when he was growing up, he was in school and he was, in the quote unquote dumb class, or the intellectual class, where he needed extra help, and he felt quite alone and isolated. So we actually went back to the moment in time that sort of was quite vivid for him and quite a tangible experience to go to. And what we did is we had a healing conversation where we actually brought in himself, and we sort of did a visualization process. But it was quite crazy, because when he was able to actually be in that memory with like a calmer state, I was able to actually asked him to, like, what actually needs to happen here? What do you want to do? What do you want to feel? And it was crazy. Like, once they're in that calm state, there's so much unexpressed emotions. And I know that was quite prevalent for my own journey, but there was just, obviously, before we even really dove deep, it was just, tears were starting to come out, because, like, these energies, these emotions get blocked in the body. How I sort of see it is, like, yeah, they get blocked by they're, like, stored in the body, but, like, it's obviously the mind. That there's like the connection between the mind and body is so fascinating. But, like, once you ask someone a question, and this is why I love questions, because to me the question is like the journey to find the emotional charge, because like it's the quest to find the ion is the charged particle. So it's like every question is like him using his conscious awareness to find that stored block in his body. And I was able to ask a question, and then sometimes it's crazy, you just ask one question and it just hits these people. It's like a light bulb moment where they shine their consciousness onto, and they have a different perspective shift, or you take them through, and it's just incredible to witness it live. It's like it's very therapeutic, even as a coach. It's like because we all have these parts of us. We all have parts of us as human beings where we have to suppress it, shut it down. And I resonated with his story, and yeah, he was basically able to re-experience that memory and be there for himself and feel safe and reaffirm that he actually is good enough. And it's crazy, like the relief it brings, but also the way that he was able to actually so not realize how much a past memory had created like current patterns. Like we know the nature of our ego is to solve problems, and one of the things I love from Peter Crone's work is like a lot of this is dissolving problems. It's like realizing that these problems are just extensions of like past patterns, past pains, and helping people re-experience the past so that they don't have to continue to fight their own like literally they're trying to reconcile their history. They're trying to prove themselves right or overcome a history, but it's only really ever a memory in their mind. And I think that is so that's frustrating, like that people walk around suffering and spend their whole lives fighting their own memories. And that's why I love when you get these results for these people and you see them transform live. It's so like, how is that not fulfilling? Like, it's just incredible.
It's incredibly fulfilling, isn't it? I think of it as well lately, like there's a million ways that you can describe it, but I think of it lately as, there's all these studies coming out about quantum entanglement, but also like within quantum physics about how they talk about how time is not linear. And they're starting to do a lot of tests around like affecting a particle and whether it affects it in the future, in the past, and things like that. And it makes me think about the fact that like, how you say like the past isn't real, it's just like a memory in your mind. When you think about it from a trauma lens though, we talk about like implicit memory, and when a memory is reactivated, that person's like their logical thinking goes offline, and so does the timekeeping part of their brain. So they're literally stuck in the past. Like even though it's in the past, it like the past like almost pulls them back. And I always think of this work when we're blending it with like the quantum field and like quantum science. I think like we're actually allowing them to go back into the past because the flashbacks and the trauma pulls them back in anyway. But when we're doing it in a theta brainwave, when they have access to the quantum field and they can visualize it and see it and it's more vivid, I was like, I think we're actually altering the past, because it's sometimes when you come out of it, it feels like you changed the past. It feels like you're not that version of you anymore. Like that didn't even really happen. And the new beliefs that you implanted feel like a new truth. And it feels like we're literally like time traveling and using the theta brainwave, which, Joe Dispenza talks about activating the pineal gland in order to connect into the field, into, the field that is faster than space and time or faster than light. And so are we actually connecting into that field and actually making a change is like such a woo-woo question to ask. But I think we might actually be. And that's why the theta brainwave as well, when you were talking about why we use the theta brainwave, we use that because we're in that state for that first 7 years of life in a hypnotic like state where we're absorbing everything, and it allows us to go back into that state to like change those things that we learned then that weren't beneficial. And it's actually quite cool that we have the ability to do that, but no one knows. Like how wild is it that we can put ourselves back into that state and back into that brainwave. And it is the brainwave. It's I talk about this in the course. I feel like you were like right on the edge of it. There's the Schumann resonance, which is like the frequency of nature is at the same frequency as the theta brainwave, which is why we get relaxed in nature. But you take yourself back into that brainwave and you're like it's like an opening. Instead of just like, this is who I am because I've closed off that frequency, it's like open again and you can make those changes. And it's like we think that it's all permanent. What happened, who we believe, who we are, all of it that happened, we think it's permanent, but actually you just go back into that state and you have the ability to change it, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. I see, like someone said it's like if you had like a vertical axis, and it's almost like you're jumping timelines. Like when you do more of this work on yourself and you change your frequency, which I find incredible. And what I also find interesting with this work as well, like I'm sure you can relate to this, like I think we fail to see it as humans at the time. Like we're always trying to like avoid, pain, right? Like that's sort of our survival instinct, not recognizing that like our greatest struggles have made us the person that we are. Like, and it's really crazy how we end up like trying to avoid things that we've labeled as causing us pain, so we run away from them. But like the people who are listening to this, or the people who do this work, like without those painful experiences, like obviously to varying degrees, like you wouldn't appreciate and love the work that you do. Like I had a like reflection recently to look back at all my experiences, and even experiences when I was in the womb with my mum. She was like one of the most stressful times I've ever, like she was basically explaining to me what her nervous system was in at that time, what she was going through. And it's like crazy that, and then there's obviously I'm actually interviewing a past lives practitioner on Wednesday, and it's like there's so crazy how there's so much stuff from the past, and the function of our mind is to look to the future, but they're parallel. They're like a mirror image. Everything that you're afraid of is mirroring something from the past, and it's crazy how much, like I had it recently. I went through a breakup probably 3.5, 4 months ago, and I had like I naturally had a lot of fears that were in the relationship, and I did a lot of the like processes and frameworks on these things. And it's crazy how much when you actually go back to past experiences, like and you actually dissolve things and change how you relate to them, how much that mirrors onto the future, and you automatically become less afraid. And it's like, that's to me is the most empowering thing, is helping people realize like once they free their mind, like their whole reality just that it transforms.
Yeah. It's one of those things that I don't know if you would agree with me, but it's one of those things that people always ask me a million questions about it when they're wanting to try it, and I'm like, literally just try it, because there's nothing that I could describe that would make sense to you. It's really it's something that's felt. You wake up a few days after that session and you're just like, where did those thoughts go? And why do I feel like a different version of myself? It's a feeling that you can't describe.
Yeah, and you can't like, and this is one of the, you don't realize how much you've changed until the same trigger doesn't trigger you, and then even then sometimes you're unconscious to it. So it's like you're like unconsciously competent at, like, your triggers aren't there, and you can forget how far you've progressed. Like if I look back to myself 6 years ago, and if I could just transport myself into my mind and experience a day and come back to now, I'd be like, holy crap, that's unbelievable how much things have transformed. But like, and this is where I love the depth of work we do, because you can access obviously instantaneous, like quite powerful results. You can get like decade-long transformations in one session. Like, that's why the deeper you go, like you can go to someone and talk about symptoms, and that can be a great starting point. But until you're meeting someone like a practitioner who can get really deep into the subconscious mind, release stored emotions, whatever needs to happen, like you're still going to be continuing to experience the same things. Like the same triggers are going to come up, the same emotions are going to store up. Like you have to change like where it starts.
Yeah, 100%. Agree. So for anyone who's, we'll wind it up, but for anyone who's watching, or watches the replay or watches the clips, who are you calling into your world at the moment to practice Aaruka on? So for people who are following me who are like, oh, maybe I should try a session out with Egan, what's the kind of person that you're like so lit up to help with right now?
Overthinkers. That's my forte.
Overthinkers, yeah.
Look, I love, it's interesting how we have people that we like to work with, and we often naturally attract in people who, the stuff that we've worked on ourselves, I find. Like, if you want to know what you've been working on, just check the patterns of your clients that you've been tracking in. Like, it's pretty crazy how it mirrors it. But definitely people with a high performance background, I think, especially whether it's like, the I'm not good enough, the I'm not enough sort of paradigm, I've heavily relate to, and I've So definitely people who are constantly living with the hypervigilance that they need to prove themselves, and just living with that tension of needing to get life right, and that relationship to life with, for me, it was anxiety, overthinking, needing to plan every single little detail out, imagine the worst case scenarios. So definitely love facilitating those sessions because I relate to it very, very deeply. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I like it. I like it. Overthinking is a good one. And it's good because this is one thing that really, like, Aaruka really does cut through the bullshit of the overthinking, because like you said, there's the words that they're saying and the unconscious the unconscious, what is it, like confessions that they're making when they're answering your questions
Freudian
with their
slips.
overthinking is just, there is a lot of confessions happening in that overthinking spiral. And just somebody who overthinks, it's such a powerful modality to come in and just be like, this is all of the shit that I'm thinking, and for someone to untangle it and go, this is where this is coming from, and to be able to unpack that, it really does work so well for that. So I think that's a really, really powerful kind of person to be working with. And yeah, it's one of those ones that I know a lot of the therapists that have been practicing for a while say that they find it not the most powerful, but very, very powerful for their clients who are high achieving, overthinking people who have done a lot of work and they've tried a lot of modalities, and they're able to like outsmart their therapist in a way to bypass actually having to do the work by being like, I'm highly self-aware and I know it's this and I know it's that and da da da. And Aaruka kind of just makes you be like, okay, cool, but but we're going to look at this and this thing that you said, and it really like does slow them down in a way and go a bit deeper.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of the like things with, I guess, the healing modalities is to be like self-aware of, is like there isn't a destination. Yeah, like, but also I love how there's a, you frame it as like a stage 2, stage 3 thing. For me, like I became quite addicted to personal transformation, which I was still stuck in this sort of paradigm of, I need to get life right, I need to get myself right, I need to master myself. So there was still a lot of tension. I didn't feel free. I thought I was free because I was intellectualizing, but there was a lot of resistance to just express myself and be myself. There was a lack of like being and embodiment. So for me now, a lot of it's just like live your life, and then when stuff comes up, then we have the most powerful transformation toolkit in the world to apply. Like you don't have to keep doing it, especially as a coach.
Yes,
as a coach, it can be quite like, I need to like, and this is something I'm navigating at the moment. That there is this like undercurrent of like myself where you feel like you have to be on sometimes, like you have this perception you have to uphold, but it's only ever your own perception. Like it's only ever your own walking story.
Being a coach or a therapist or a practitioner, even a Aaruka practitioner, somebody who's showing up online as well, is like fucking petrol on the fire for somebody who tries to be perfect, because you're like, well, I have to be integrated. I have to be the embodiment of that thing, and I have to have it all worked out before I can tell someone else and before I can share this thing online. And it actually just becomes another reason to like keep doing the work. And it's just this hamster wheel, which I love that you mentioned the stages of healing, because that stage 3 is stop doing the work, go out and live your life and enjoy life. And when something really needs to be addressed, it will punch you in the face and you can go back and do a bit of work and then go back and live your life oblivious again and enjoy the ride. But not many people get there. And I still fluctuate between the two, because that's the human experience. Hey.
Yeah, we need it.
Yeah, we need it. But I'm constantly reminding myself to not dig into things that don't need to be dug into.
Yeah, 100%.
So thank you so much for coming on. We'll leave it there. I'm going to post this to the grid, so anyone who's like jumped in late and wants to go back and watch, and we'll be making some clips out of it. And yeah, I'm excited to start sending some people your way.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me. It was awesome to chat through everything.
It was a great chat. Bye.
Awesome.